First contact and miscalculation. Dr. Sarah Chen watched the stars through the observation deck of Research Station Omega-7, her coffee growing cold in her hands. The small station orbited a dead planet on the very edge of human space, conducting mineral surveys and atmospheric studies. It was quiet work, peaceful work, exactly what she had requested after her retirement from active duty 3 years ago. The peace shattered when Marcus Reed burst through the doors, his usually calm face pale with shock. The big man had served as the station's chief engineer for 2 years, and Sarah had never seen him rattle before. "Sarah, you need to see this," Marcus said, his voice tight. "We got massive contacts coming in fast. 20 ships, maybe more." Sarah set down her coffee and followed Marcus to the command center. The small room hummed with activity as their skeleton crew of 12 worked frantically at their stations. On the main screen, sensor readings showed a fleet of vessels approaching their position. Each ship was larger than anything in the human fleet, their dark hulls covered in angular designs that hurt to look at. "Any response to our hails?" Sarah asked, slipping into her command chair with practiced ease. "Nothing," replied Lisa Park, their communications officer. "They're jamming all frequencies except one. I think they want to talk, but only on their terms." Sarah nodded and straightened her civilian clothes. To anyone watching, she appeared to be exactly what her records claimed. A retired xenobiologist who had taken a quiet research position to study alien microorganisms. The truth was somewhat different. "Put them through," she ordered. The main screen flickered and revealed something that made several crew members gasp. The alien standing before them was tall and imposing, with metallic silver skin that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. Its eyes glowed with a cold blue light, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am Commander Zeth of the Corvini Empire," the alien announced. "You will identify yourselves and explain your presence in our territory." Sarah stood slowly, making sure to appear nervous and intimidated. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, director of this research station. We're conducting peaceful scientific studies. We had no idea this was your territory." Commander Zeth's glowing eyes narrowed as he studied the human command center. Sarah could see him taking note of their outdated equipment, their small crew, their apparent vulnerability. His expression grew more contemptuous with each passing second. "Your species is unknown to us," Zeth continued. "How many worlds do you control?" Sarah hesitated, letting fear creep into her voice. "We have settlements on about 40 planets. Most of our people still live on our homeworld, Earth." 40 worlds, Zeth repeated, his tone suggesting he found the number pathetically small. "And your military capabilities?" "We have defensive forces," Sarah said carefully. "Nothing like what you've shown us here." Behind Zeth, other Corvini moved around what appeared to be a sophisticated command bridge. Sarah noticed weapons systems, scanning equipment, and tactical displays that suggested these aliens were very experienced at conquest. "The Corvini Empire has ruled this galaxy for over 2,000 years, Zeth announced. "We have brought order to 17 different species. Now we will bring order to yours." Marcus stepped forward, his engineer's uniform rumpled and stained with grease. To the aliens, he must have looked like a simple maintenance worker. "Order? What kind of order?" Zeth's metallic features twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Your species will surrender all weapons and warships to the Empire. Your worlds will be governed by Corvini administrators. Your people will be relocated to planets where their primitive skills can be put to proper use." "And if we refuse?" Sarah asked, though she kept her voice small and frightened. "Then we will demonstrate why refusal is not an option," Zeth replied coldly. "We have studied your pathetic fleet movements, your crude communication systems, your laughably weak defensive positions. It would take us perhaps 15 standard days to conquer every human world." Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus, who was doing an excellent job of looking shocked and helpless. In reality, Marcus Reed had spent 12 years in the human special forces before becoming an engineer. His hands, which currently held a maintenance tablet, had once operated some of the most advanced weapon systems ever built. "You seem reasonable for a primitive species," Zeth continued. "I will give you one rotation of your planet to consider our offer. Send word to your leaders. Tell them that surrender is their only choice." The screen went dark, and the alien fleet began to withdraw to what they clearly considered a safe distance. Around the command center, Sarah's crew maintained their act of fear and confusion, but she could see the familiar hardness creeping into their eyes. "Lisa," Sarah said quietly, "send a message to Earth. Code Delta 7. Lisa nodded and began typing rapidly. To any observer, she appeared to be sending a panicked report about first contact with hostile aliens. The reality was quite different. Code Delta 7 was a classified military protocol that would alert Admiral Thomas Kane and the hidden defense network that had been waiting for this moment for over 30 years. As the message streamed toward Earth through quantum communication channels that the Corveni couldn't detect, Sarah walked back to the observation deck. Marcus followed her, his heavy footsteps echoing in the corridor. "They'd bought it completely," Marcus said once they were alone. "Arrogant bastards think we're nothing more than cave dwellers with rockets." Sarah smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. "Good. How long until the Admiral receives our message?" 3 hours for the quantum burst to reach the hidden relay," Marcus replied. "Another hour for full network activation. The Corveni think they're giving us 24 hours to panic. They have no idea what they've actually given us time to do." Through the observation window, Sarah could see the alien fleet holding position at the edge of the system. Their ships were impressive, she had to admit. The Corveni had clearly mastered several technologies that human scientists would love to study, but there was something about their formation, their positioning, their whole approach that told her everything she needed to know about their military doctrine. "They fight species that surrender quickly," she observed. "Look at their formation. They're designed for intimidation, not for sustained combat against an adaptive enemy." Marcus nodded, his engineer's mind already working through the tactical implications. Their energy signatures suggest plasma-based weapons and standard composite armor. Nothing we haven't prepared for. On Earth, Admiral Thomas Kane sat in a conference room buried 3 kilometers beneath the Rockies. The quantum message from Station Omega 7 had reached him 20 minutes ago, and now he was briefing the most important military leaders on the planet. The room was filled with men and women who officially didn't exist, running programs that weren't in any public records. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kane said, his weathered face grim, "the day we've been preparing for has finally arrived. The Corveni Empire has made contact, and as predicted, they've issued an ultimatum." General Rebecca Stone, head of the Colonial Defense Force, leaned forward in her chair. "What's Dr. Chen's assessment?" "They're exactly what our simulations predicted," Kane replied. "Overconfident, inflexible, and completely convinced that what they've seen represents the full extent of human capability." Colonel James Wright, director of the Deep Space Reconnaissance Program, smiled grimly. "They scanned our outer colonies, didn't they? What did they find?" "Exactly what we wanted them to find," Kane answered. "Farming communities, research stations, mining operations, all staffed by apparent civilians using outdated technology." Dr. Amanda Foster, the civilian scientist who had spent 20 years designing humanity's real military capabilities, spoke up from her position at the far end of the table. "How many ships are we looking at?" 20 in the first wave," Kane replied. "Our deep space monitors suggest they have about 200 more in reserve, waiting to see if they need them." General Stone laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 200 ships. They think they're overwhelming us." Kane pressed a button on the table, and the room's holographic display activated. Instead of showing the Earth that most people knew about, it revealed something far more impressive. Hidden shipyards orbited in the shadow of Jupiter's moons. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids filled the gaps between Mars and Earth. Every supposedly civilian colony was revealed to have massive underground military installations. Project Vanguard has been active for 32 years, Kane announced, while the public exploration program has been making peaceful contact preparations. We've been preparing for war. The display zoomed in on individual colony worlds, showing their true nature. New Geneva, supposedly a simple agricultural world, was revealed to have a planetary defense grid that could stop a fleet 3 times the size of what the Corvini had brought. Eden Prime, listed in public records as a mining operation, was actually the testing ground for humanity's most advanced weapon systems. Colonel Wright stood up and walked to the display. What about our assessment of their technology? Dr. Foster smiled for the first time since entering the room. Their ships are impressive for intimidation, but they've never faced an enemy that adapts during battle. Their weapons are powerful but inflexible. Most importantly, they've never encountered stealth technology or modular ship design. Kane nodded and changed the display to show the true extent of human military capability. Instead of the 40 colonies the Corvini had identified, the map revealed over 300 hidden installations. Ghost fleets waited in the darkness between systems. Weapons that officially didn't exist were powered up and ready for deployment. Captain Elena Vasquez is already in position with the 7th Fleet, Kane continued. The Corvini think they're facing a single research station with no backup. They have no idea that our helpless scientists are sitting in the middle of the largest military trap in human history. As the meeting continued, plans were finalized for humanity's response. The Corvini had given them 24 hours to surrender. Instead, they would use those hours to spring the most elaborate deception in military history. Back on Station Omega-7, Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck and watched the alien fleet. In 18 hours, Commander Zeth would receive humanity's answer. It wouldn't be the surrender he expected. Instead, he would learn the difference between what humanity showed the universe and what humanity was actually capable of. The Corvini thought they were dealing with primitives. They were about to discover they had challenged the most dangerously clever species in the galaxy. The trap was set. The prey had taken the bait. Now all that remained was to close the jaws and show these arrogant conquerors what humans did to those who threatened their families. The Awakening and Revelation. 18 hours later, Commander Zeth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, and waited for the human response. His metallic fingers drummed against his command chair as he watched the primitive research station through his viewscreen. The small facility looked even more pathetic in daylight. Its outdated solar collectors and basic communication arrays a testament to humanity's technological inferiority. Any word from the human homeworld? He asked his communications officer. Negative, Commander, came the reply. However, we are receiving a transmission from the research station. Zeth's glowing eyes brightened with anticipation. Put them through. Dr. Sarah Chen appeared on the screen, looking tired and defeated. Behind her, the same small crew worked at their stations with the resignation of those who knew they had no choice but to submit. Commander Zeth, Sarah began, her voice carrying the weight of surrender. I've been in contact with our government. Earth is prepared to discuss terms. Zeth's metallic features twisted into a satisfied expression. Wise decision, Dr. Chen. Your species has chosen survival over pointless resistance. However, Sarah continued, our leaders have requested a demonstration of your military capabilities before formal surrender. They'd want to be certain that resistance would be futile. Zeth paused, his tactical mind considering this request. It was not unusual for conquered species to ask for such demonstrations. Fear was, after all, an excellent motivator for compliance. Very well, he decided. We will provide your leaders with a suitable demonstration. There is a small human colony in the neighboring system. We will show them what happens to those who might consider resistance. Sarah's face went pale, and she seemed to struggle with her next words. Commander, that colony has over 50,000 civilians. Surely a demonstration against a military target would be more appropriate. Zeth's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. Dr. Chen, You misunderstand our purpose. We do not wish to demonstrate our military capabilities. We wish to demonstrate the consequences of defiance. Your civilian colony will serve perfectly." The transmission ended, and Zeth began issuing orders to his fleet. Half of his ships would remain to guard the research station, while the other half traveled to the human colony of Haven's Rest. According to their intelligence, it was a simple farming community with minimal defenses and no military value. Perfect for making an example. As the Corvani fleet split and began moving toward their target, Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Station Omega-7 and smiled grimly. Marcus Reed looked up from his engineering station, his own expression equally grim. "They took the bait," Sarah said quietly. "Alert Captain Vasquez. It's time to show them what they're really dealing with." 3 hours later, 10 Corvani warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Haven's Rest system. What they found looked exactly like their intelligence had predicted. A single planet with obvious agricultural development, a handful of orbital facilities that appeared to be simple farming stations, and no military presence whatsoever. Sub-Commander Krell, leading the attack force, opened communications with the planet's surface. "This is the Corvani Empire. You have been selected for a demonstration of our power. Evacuation is not permitted. Resistance is futile." The response came from what appeared to be a simple farming administrator, a middle-aged woman with dirt on her clothes and worry in her eyes. "Please, we're just farmers. We don't have any weapons. Can't you just take what you need and leave us alone?" Krill's glowing eyes showed no mercy. "You misunderstand your situation. You are not being robbed. You are being made an example." The Corvani ships began powering up their plasma cannons, preparing to turn the peaceful farming world into a burning example of the Empire's power. Krell watched the energy readings climb and felt the familiar satisfaction of absolute dominance. That satisfaction lasted exactly 47 seconds. The first sign that something was wrong came when the farming stations suddenly exploded outward, revealing themselves to be cleverly disguised weapons platforms. Massive rail guns that had been hidden within what appeared to be grain silos began tracking the Corvani ships with mechanical precision. The second sign came when the planet's surface erupted with energy signatures that shouldn't exist. What had appeared to be farmland was revealed to contain one of the most sophisticated planetary defense grids ever constructed. The third sign came when space itself seemed to tear open as Captain Elena Vasquez's 7th Fleet materialized from hyperspace jumps that had been calculated to position them perfectly around the Corvani formation. Sub-Commander Krell stared at his tactical display in growing horror as his 10 ships found themselves surrounded by 30 human vessels that were far more advanced than anything in their intelligence reports. These weren't the primitive exploration ships they had been told to expect. These were warships designed by a species that understood exactly how to kill Corvani technology. "Impossible," Krell whispered as his sensors showed him the true nature of what he was facing. "The humans are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours." His tactical officer's voice cracked with fear. "Sir, I'm reading weapon systems we don't recognize. Their ships are using some kind of modular design that's adapting in real time. And their stealth technology. Sir, I think there are more ships out there that we can't even detect." On the planet's surface, the woman who had appeared to be a simple farming administrator removed her dirt-stained jacket to reveal the uniform of a Colonial Defense Force colonel. Colonel Maria Santos had spent 15 years preparing Haven's Rest for exactly this moment. "All defensive positions. This is control," she announced over the planetary communication grid. "Execute Protocol 7. Show them what farmers can do when you threaten their families." Across the planet, what the Corvani had taken for agricultural equipment began transforming with mechanical efficiency. Grain harvesters became mobile artillery platforms. Irrigation systems revealed themselves to be underground missile launch networks. The peaceful farming communities that had appeared so vulnerable were revealed to contain some of the most motivated and well-trained soldiers in human space. In orbit, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her flagship and opened a communication channel to the trapped Corvani fleet. Unlike the frightened researchers and farmers the aliens had been dealing with, Elena Vasquez looked like exactly what she was, a career military officer who had spent her entire adult life preparing for this fight. "Sub-Commander Krell," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned. I strongly recommend you surrender immediately." Krell's image appeared on her screen, his metallic features twisted with rage and confusion. "This is impossible. Our intelligence showed your species was primitive. You have no advanced military technology." Vasquez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Sub-Commander, what you've seen up until now represents our civilian exploration program. You've been dealing with our scientists, our farmers, our researchers, people who retired from active military service because they preferred peaceful work." She paused, letting that information sink in before continuing. "What you're facing now is what we kept hidden. Did you really think a species would expand to 40 star systems without developing the ability to protect them?" On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Zeth watched his tactical display with growing dread as his attack force was systematically surrounded and neutralized. The humans weren't just defeating his ships, they were doing it with a casual efficiency that spoke of overwhelming technological superiority. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, his voice shaking, "I'm detecting massive fleet movements throughout human space. These aren't exploration vessels, sir. These are warships. Hundreds of them." Zeth stared at the display as the true extent of human military capability revealed itself. Every colony world his scouts had identified was erupting with hidden defensive installations. Every civilian freighter was revealed to carry military-grade weapons. Every supposedly helpless research station was broadcasting tactical coordination signals that suggested a level of military organization the Corvani had never encountered. Dr. Sarah Chen's image appeared on his screen, but she no longer looked like a frightened scientist. Instead, she stood with the bearing of someone who had spent decades planning for this exact moment. "Commander Zeth," she said, her voice now carrying the authority of her true rank, "I am General Sarah Chen, formerly of the Human Strategic Defense Command. I've been retired for 3 years, which is why I was assigned to that peaceful research station." Zeth's glowing eyes widened as the implications hit him. You were never civilians." "Oh, we were," Sarah replied. "Marcus Reed really is an engineer now. He used to design weapons systems for the Special Forces. Lisa Park really does run communications for a research station. She used to run tactical communications for entire fleet operations. We're all exactly what we appeared to be. Humans who retired from military service to pursue peaceful careers." She paused, her expression becoming almost sympathetic. "The problem, Commander, is that you assumed peaceful meant helpless. You assumed that because we chose to pursue science and farming and exploration, we had forgotten how to fight." Throughout human space, the careful deception of 30 years was finally revealed. The Corvani had encountered exactly what they expected to find: a young species with limited technology and peaceful intentions. What they had failed to understand was that every single human they had met was exactly what they claimed to be, while simultaneously being far more than they appeared. The farmers of Haven's Rest really were farmers. They were also veterans of the colonial wars who had chosen to grow food instead of destroying enemies. The researchers on Station Omega-7 really were scientists. They were also retired military personnel who had decided that discovery was more interesting than conquest. Admiral Thomas Kane's image replaced Sarah's on Commander Zeth's screen. Kane wore the uniform of the Human Defense Force, and his weathered face carried the weight of someone who had spent his entire career preparing for this day. "Commander Zeth," Kane said simply, 32 years ago, we detected the first signs of the Corvani Empire. We spent 3 decades preparing for your arrival. Everything you've seen, every assessment you've made, every strategic decision you've based on your observations has been carefully orchestrated." Zeth's metallic features contorted with rage and humiliation. "You deceived us. "We showed you exactly what we were," Kane replied calmly. "Farmers, scientists, explorers, researchers. People who had chosen peaceful lives after military careers. The deception was your assumption that peaceful meant weak." As the Corvini fleet found itself completely surrounded and hopelessly outmatched, Commander Zeth finally understood the magnitude of his miscalculation. The humans hadn't hidden their military from his scouts. They had hidden their military in plain sight, disguised as the very civilians he had dismissed as primitive and helpless. The species he had planned to conquer in 15 days had spent 30 years preparing for his arrival. Every human he had encountered was exactly what they claimed to be and far more than he had imagined possible. As his ships powered down their weapons in surrender, Zeth realized the most chilling truth of all. If this was what humans were capable of when they were trying to be peaceful, what would they do when they decided to stop being polite? The answer, he suspected, was something the galaxy had never seen before.